Okay. All right. Here I go again. That's good because I've thought of some things to say in the middle of it. You ever do that? You'd be talking and stuff just the stuff that you're supposed to say kind of comes to you while you say it, and it's like, yeah, this ain't even coming from me. Okay. So this week I'm going to talk about answering with silence. Okay? Answering with silence. Answering with silence, So the answer is the answer just is. The answer just is. Right? Yeah. The answer just is. It's not this. It's not that. It's not here. It's not there. It's not now. It's not later. It's not something that's to come. It just is. It just is. The answer just is. Just is. It's not an answer to anything, because the answer does not answer to anything any more than a king would answer to anybody. A king has no need to reply to anybody because he's the king. His presence alone is sufficient in that he needs answer to nobody. And so the answer is not an answer to anything, to anybody. It's not an answer to a question. It's not an answer to a problem. It's the answer that problems and questions answer themselves to. It's the answer that all problems and questions answer themselves to. Answer themselves to. Because the answer is within them. The answer simply reflects back to them what they already know, what they already are. And there's times when people come and they approach me and they want an answer, Sort of like riddle me this, Batman. And if I'm in tune, they leave being the answer that they came for. And I've added nothing to them. I've taken nothing from them. When my heart's open, when my mind's clear, my presence reflects me and I am my presence. I'm one with what I'm one. I'm whole, I'm complete in my being here, now, present, And in that there's a sufficiency that comes out of that wholehearted presence, when you're really here, when you're completely here, there's the sufficiency that comes out of that wholehearted presence. And with that sufficiency, I can hold my tongue. I don't have to answer to. I don't have to answer to this person or that person or this situation or that situation. I owe no one, nobody an answer. I'm free of debt. I owe nobody an answer. I owe nobody an answer because I let them be the answer that they seek. And how can I give them what they already have? So there's this sufficiency that arises out of this wholehearted presence that allows me to hold my tongue. Because nothing needs to be said where there is no need. Nothing needs to be said where there is no need. Nothing needs to be said. Needs to be said where there is no need. Then my words come from grace rather than a need of the ego to express itself, right? Then my words can come from the grace within me rather than the need for the ego to express itself. In this sufficiency that comes with this wholehearted presence, I can hold my tongue because nothing needs to be said where there is no need. Then my words can come from the grace rather than the need for the ego to express itself. And then what is said is said in time. It's said in sync. It's said in harmony. The way it's said fits into the picture, fits into the scenery so well, so perfectly, with such pristine clarity, so naturally, that what is said is camouflaged in its obviousness. Yeah. It fits in so naturally. It's camouflaged in its obviousness that no one sees or hears what is said. So the words themselves are the silence from which they arise. The words themselves are the silence from which they arise. Then that's what really influences you. That's what really influences me. It's not what we see and hear that influences us the most. It's what's present that we're unaware of that influences us the most. Because there's no resistance when we're unaware of it. It can do its work. Right? Yeah. When the ego is unaware of it, the ego is not resisting it. So there's this way of saying things with presence that comes out of this pristine silence that the ego just can't defeat. It's like light. You know? It's like light. Light's quiet like that. You know? But what does light do to the ego? Wow. Oh. So I was reading this week, reading and meditating on different sutras and scriptures, and one of the things I came across was a Taoist philosopher called Wu Sin. It's spelled Wuhsin. Wuhsin. And Wu Sin was an ancient Taoist sage, a lot like Lao Tzu. Wu Sin, his name literally means no mind. No mind. That's the translation of it into English. And he, a lot like Lao Tzu, was kind of an untraceable person. He was so obvious that you didn't see him. The legend goes that Lao Tzu, when nobody knew where he came from or where he went to, he rode out on like a bull into the desert. Nobody seen him again, and it's like the Jesus is compared to Melchizedek, a priest in the Old Testament, which nobody knew his origin, where he came from, or where he went to. Where he was born from, or where he was headed. And Jesus said that those that are born of the Spirit are like the wind. You don't know where they come from or where they're going, you know. So there's this way of the masters. This way of the masters. It's a way of getting out of the way and letting the way do its work. It's a way of getting out of the way and letting the way do its work. So that the ego actually becomes clay in its hands, in the master's hands. Oblivious to even being in the master's hands, you know. Let me read you a passage from one of Wu Sin's short discourses. This is recorded with it, that Wu Sin entered this great hall, and during certain seasons, these masters, these ancient sages, would speak discourses, and this one went like this. Let me get a drink. Wu Sin has not visited the abode of the truth. Its address is unknown, even to him. Therefore, the focus here is neither on seeking nor finding the truth. Rather, it's weeding out the lies. The discovery of truth is in the discernment of the false. Wu Sin is helpless before you in that he could not transform you into what you already are. In this sense, Wu Sin bestows the greatest gift to you by informing you that you are not what you seem to be. Then I like what he says next. He goes, this is nothing new. Instead, it is the most ancient, transmitted through silence. Silence is the most powerful instruction. It is the global solvent in which all doubts and questions dissolve. It is the silence that is eloquent. He says it's the global solvent in which all doubts and questions dissolve. It's the silence that's eloquent. Then he goes on to say, Wu Sin's speaking is an interruption of the to the silence. Wu Sin's speaking is an interruption to the silence. The silence speaks far louder than any of his words. As such, most of our time together is spent in the silence. For those not yet able to discern from the silence, Wu Sin will offer a few words daily. However, be forewarned, words consistently fail to express the ineffable. Every word approaches it and is then repelled back. More words fail further. Words produce concepts. Many words produce many concepts. Oh, yeah. So, to me, Wu Sin is saying there, what he's saying is, the more you try to explain it, the more confusing it becomes. Sometimes you just can't say it. You can only be it. You can only show it, right? Okay, and Wu Sin goes on to say this. In that regard, Wu Sin speaks minimally, making a point and leaving it up to the listener to allow the words to bask in silence, and in so doing discern the deeper meaning. Don't attempt to understand. Don't deal with my words with the intellect. Don't commit them to memory. Let the words pass through you, piercing through the mind and through the intellect, and returning to their true source. Wu Sin is not speaking person to person. Personage is not welcome in this hall. There is no transmission. There is no transmitter. There is no receiver. You came here as an individual. If you leave here as an individual, you have gotten nothing. There is something which is true. There is something which truly is no thing, from which everything is its expression. I like what he said there. I'm going to say that again. There is something which is truly no thing, from which everything is its expression. And then he goes on to say, I am formless, yet appearing as me with form. The body, its sensing systems, and the mind are all referenced via I. That is, I act, I see, I think. These are its agents. These are its agent, its instrument. It is that which exists in and of itself, dependent on nothing, requiring nothing. It manifests as polarity. It's noumena and phenomena, the one and the many, the eternal, unchanging, unconditioned, juxtaposed with the time-bound, changeful, conditioned. This is the framework which we will develop beginning tomorrow. And with that, he stood and he left the hall. I've been reading a little bit of this guy, and I really like him. Really like him. I'm even trying to put something together where I can upload it on YouTube and do nothing more than just share his discourses word for word with a little bit of silence in between each discourse. I think I'm going to try doing that with Wu Sin and with the Tao Te Ching as well. I've already started it, and hopefully I'll complete it this week. Lord willing, the creek don't rise. So anyway, getting back to this silence and this presence, there's this way of answering. There's this way of answering what life brings to us in God's own language, without a tongue, with silence. And that silence is the highest form of communication. The highest form of communication. Let's think about this a minute. Let's consider this. How is silence the highest form of communication? Just consider the different ways that we communicate without words. A glance of the eye, just a simple glance of the eye, can speak to you what words cannot entail. Disdain or praise are both recognizable in the glance at a level that words just can't do justice to. Have you ever gotten a look from somebody like that, where they didn't have to say a word, just the look? It's like when Peter denied Jesus and he was standing by the fire and Jesus glanced at him and the cock crowed. That look. You know? Or that look that you give to somebody who you admire or love. There's a way of communicating without words, with just the eyes, with just presence. Attention itself communicates. Just let that settle there a minute. Just hold that a minute. Let that kind of sit there in the mouth of your heart. Just kind of let it sit there and taste it slowly. Attention itself communicates. Attention itself communicates. Attention itself communicates love. Love. How do you know I love you? I give you my attention. The listening ear can communicate in a way that words can't. See, I can speak words to you. Words can be misunderstood. Words always have the potential to be misunderstood. Words always have the potential to be misunderstood. In the Bible, St. Paul, he refers to the devil as being the prince and the power of the air, in so much that as words are spoken and go through space, that the devil will twist them and contort them so that when they're taken in, they're seen through a twisted, perverse interpretation and taken wrongly. And you don't even have to believe in the devil to see the principle here anyway. To see that I can speak to you, and depending on your mood and my mood, in the environment we're in, and things like that, that the words that can take on a completely different meaning when they approach you than what I said. So there's a way of communicating that's higher than the words, that can't be twisted, that can't be contorted, that can't be misunderstood. Attention that communicates love, it cannot be misunderstood. You give somebody loving attention, it's understood. It's just simply, it's the one language. Love is the one language that the whole world knows. No one needs an interpreter, right? It's the one language that the whole world knows. So there's this attention that communicates love. And so the listening ear is not a defensive or offensive, like words can turn out to be, you know. The listening ear is not occupied with protecting and guarding the ego, right? Its vocation is rather about reception. It's more of a receptionist than a police officer. The listening ear is more of a receptionist than a police officer. The listening ear communicates consideration. The listening ear communicates compassion, wisdom. It's the ear of love itself. The listening ear is the ear of love itself. Jesus was very familiar with the power of silence. Let me get a drink. So Jesus was very, very familiar with the power of silence. He invoked it on many an occasion. Jesus invoked the power of silence. The prophet Isaiah foretold. He told of Jesus' coming and what his manifestation would be like when he came to the earth. And Isaiah the prophet foretold of Jesus. He said this. He talked about Jesus' manifestation, kind of like a way that things are manifested in the silence, like the sunlight, right? Like the sunlight. The light doesn't talk. As a matter of fact, if there's light in this room I'm in right now, and I see all the things in the room, but I don't see the light itself. Look around right now. Look around where you're at. Look at all the things that the light reveals. But you don't see the light itself. You see that which the light shines on and reflects it. You ever see the rays of light coming through a window in a dusty room? And it's the dust and the air that allows you to see the rays of light. What you're actually looking at is the dust, not the light itself. And so it is with this silence that I'm talking about makes everything manifest. Makes everything manifest. And if you don't believe me, just be quiet, be still, turn off the radio, turn off the TV, put the book down, sit in silence. And everything will become manifest. You're gonna find all that stuff that you didn't want to see going through your mind. All those things you didn't want to feel. Because the silence is like that light. It just simply reveals everything. Without discrimination. Without condition. When the silence is there, it is just like the light. I could say they're of the same body, light and silence, you know? Because the silence just has a way of revealing everything, right? Anyway, the prophet Isaiah, he He penned this, scribed this. Poet that he was, prophet that he was, seer, sage, whatever you want to call him. He spoke and he said of Jesus, "Behold my servant, whom I have chosen, my beloved, in whom my soul is well pleased. I will put my spirit upon him, and he shall show judgment or discernment to the Gentiles. He shall not strive, nor cry, nor shall any man hear his voice in the streets. A bruised reed shall he not break, a smoking flax shall he not quench, till he sends forth judgment unto victory." So he's showing discernment. He's bringing forth revelation without effort, because he won't strive. Without words, he doesn't cry out. Jesus really was the light that he said that he claimed to be, wasn't he? He really is the light that he claims to be. Without effort, without the force of words, he brings everything to light. Whatever is brought to light is light. It becomes it. So he says, "A bruised reed shall he not break. A smoking flax, which would be like the wick of a candle, shall he not quench till he sends forth judgment unto victory." There's a lot of cool stuff I can get out of that, you know. I look at the way the world is, and the way of the world is they don't want the world does not the world as God created, but the world system, the worldly way of thinking and seeing and being. The way of the world is to nail you to a cross and then to tell you to get down because they need the wood. It's to stir up your ego and get you to lose your cool, and then turn around and condemn you for losing it, so that it can justify itself in proving you to be false. But don't fall for this. Don't fall for this. The nature of Jesus is to reignite your passion for living, to reignite your passion for loving, to restore your sensitivity and your sense of righteousness. He said, "A bruised reed he won't break, a smoking wick he won't snuff out." So a righteous dude might fall 7 times, but he gets back up. That's the way that righteous peeps fall. They fall with grace, not from it. It's the resurrecting, the getting back up, the rising again that makes them authentic. That's what makes them authentic. Water, it's the nature of water to become still. That doesn't mean water never gets troubled. Yet if you just leave the water alone, it goes back to stillness, because that's its nature. Things return to their nature. They go back to their source. And Jesus got this. Jesus really grokked it. He grokked it. When others demanded that Jesus defend himself, he's recorded as simply just holding his peace. Holding his peace. I believe it was out of Matthew, and it said, "Then the high priest stood up and said to Jesus," this is when they were trying him in the court of their law, and then the high priest stood up and said to Jesus, "Are you not going to answer? Are you not going to answer? What is the testimony that these men are bringing against you?" But Jesus remained silent. Think of what the high priest said. He goes, are you not going to answer? Demanding an answer from the answer. That's what he was doing, was demanding an answer from the answer. And he got none. But silence. And silence was the answer. Jesus and the silence are one. You know? In another account, I believe it was by Matthew, it goes, when he was accused by the chief priests and elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate asked him, don't you hear the testimony that they're bringing against you? But Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor. To the great amazement of Pilate, of the governor. There's this Roman governor is demanding an answer from Jesus. And Jesus just stands there, doesn't say a thing. He lets the silence do the talking. And it just amazed the way that Jesus stayed collected, cool and calm in the face of being condemned to crucifixion. It's that silence, it's that just the presence. Just the presence. He let the presence speak for him. So there's this presence, this silence that brings amazement with it. There's this awe that follows a noble silence. The Buddha talked a lot about noble silence. And there's a mark of nobility in the silence. The silence holds the mark of nobility itself. Because the king needs give no explanation. He's right simply because he's the king. His being justifies itself. His presence alone testifies to his royalty. A beggar clothed in noble silence is much more of a king than a chattering fool in royal attire. A beggar clothed in noble silence is much more of a king than a chattering fool in royal attire. And that's the way it went with the Buddha. Buddha walked around in the garments of a beggar. But when he came and he met with kings, they perceived him as being a king, even though he wore the habit of a beggar. And he carried a begging bowl with him. But when he met with the kings would recognize his nobility. And they'd be amazed at the presence of the Buddha. The presence of the Buddha spoke volumes without a word, you know. Lao Tzu also recognized the worth of this priceless attribute of being quiet, of being silent, of being present, you know. Lao Tzu, in the Tao Te Ching, he said, "He who knows does not speak, and he who speaks does not know." He who knows does not speak, and he who speaks does not know. Another thing Lao Tzu said in the Tao, he said, The Tao is always at ease. It overcomes without competing, answers without speaking a word. The Tao is always at ease. It overcomes without competing, answers without speaking a word. The word Tao, when I say the word Tao, you can also think of it as being the way. The way, that's what the word means, is the way. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, the life. So Jesus could have just as well said that I am the Tao, the truth, the life. And just as Jesus did, Lao Tzu also understood that silence was the best way to answer. It was the best answer. To overcome with presence. To overcome with presence rather than overpowering with words. To overcome with presence rather than overpowering with words. That's what St. Paul referred to when he said, when he referred to us being more than conquerors. More than conquerors. Remember what St. Paul said. He said, who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or peril or sword, as it's written, for your sake we're killed all day long, we're accounted as sheep for the slaughter. Nay, no, in all these things we're more than conquerors, through him that loved us. For I'm persuaded that neither life, nor death, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other creature shall be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. And it's the presence of love. It's the presence of love, of that love, that we can't be separated from. You can't be separated from the love of God, because the love of God is what you are. It's folly. You can't do it. You'll end up frustrating yourself. The ego gets so frustrated. The ego gets so frustrated in trying to separate itself from the love of God. But you are the love of God. How will it get away? How shall it escape it? It's the presence of love that you cannot be separated from, because you are the love. That you are the love that allows you to transcend, to be more than a conqueror, to be more than a conqueror, to be one who overcomes with the glowing presence of the love that you are. More than a conqueror. Transcending, rising above the use of force and power. St. Paul, in his epistle to the church of Thessalonica, he said this. Paul, writing to the church of Thessalonica, he said, the mystery of wickedness is already at work, but let him who is restraining it once be removed, and the wicked one will appear openly. The Lord will destroy him with the breath of his mouth and will annihilate him with his glorious appearance at his coming. I'm going to read that again. The mystery of wickedness is already at work. But let him who is restraining it once be removed, and the wicked one will appear openly. The Lord will destroy him with the breath of his mouth and will annihilate him with the glorious appearance of his coming. So there's this way that the presence, the glorious appearance, his glorious appearance, his presence does all the work, St. John wrote this. He said, "For this purpose was the Son of God manifested, that he might destroy the works of the devil." This is why the Son of God was manifested, that he might destroy the works of the devil. It's the presence of the Son of God. When you bring presence, the presence of the sons of God that we are, that's powerful when we bring presence to the world. Jesus destroys the darkness by the presence of being light. It's not by effort, it's not by labor. Darkness is annihilated by the presence of truth, by the presence of light. And so he's called us to be a light of the world, a city set on a hill that can't be hid, to be a loving presence in an insensitive, ignorant world. To be a loving presence in an insensitive, ignorant world. And the ignorance is done away with by presence. We are there for what we choose not to ignore and become indifferent to. We are present for what we choose not to ignore and become indifferent to. We are there for which we choose not to ignore or become indifferent to. We are the light of the world when we are there for what we choose not to ignore or become indifferent to. All of it, all the pleasure, all the pain, all of it. It's the presence. It's not by a gospel that we preach with words. It's not by indoctrinating the masses. It's not by a battle of wits that we force people to conform to our beliefs and notions and our rationalizations and logic. It doesn't come like that. That's not how the kingdom comes. But St. Francis put it very well. He said, preach the gospel without words. Be it. We're not called to witness, we're called to be witnesses. It's all about being the light. Preach with presence, not with words. Preach with presence, not with words. Preach with presence, not with words. I like another thing Lao Tzu said. He said, the master allows things to happen. She shapes events as they come. She steps out of the way and lets the Tao speak for itself. She steps out of the way and lets the Tao speak for itself. The master doesn't speak for the Tao. The master gets out of the way and lets the Tao speak for itself. The Tao does the Tao. The Tao does the Tao. The Tao does the Tao. The best thing I can give people is just the Tao. It's just the Tao. Just the Tao, you know. The Tao will do itself. If people have a heart to hear the Tao will do itself. There is no way to. The way is the way. There is no answer to. The answer is the answer. The poem writes itself. The dance dances itself. The Tao speaks for itself. The Tao being an intelligence higher than the egoic intellect. That's the best way to approach and respond to what comes our way. It's the answer that cannot be resisted. That cannot be resisted. The master cannot be resisted because he resists no one. Answer somebody with the Tao from presence, from silence. Who can argue with silence? It doesn't argue. Oh, my presence, my silence does not argue. It doesn't argue. It doesn't contend. Therefore, it can't be resisted. The only thing that people can resist is my ego, in the logic and the rationalization that comes out of it. Oh. But there's this presence, there's this wisdom, there's this silence that is irresistible. Irresistible. The Apostle Luke wrote in the Gospel of Luke, he said this. He accounts that Jesus said this. He said, "But before all this, they'll lay hands on you and persecute you, deliver you to the synagogues and prisons, and you'll be brought before kings and governors, all on account of my name. And this will result in your being witnesses to them. Being. This will result in your being witnesses to them. Not in your witnessing to them, but in your being witnesses to them." And he goes on to say, "Make up your mind. Don't worry beforehand how you will defend yourselves. For I will give you words and wisdom that none of your adversaries will be able to resist or contradict." words that come out of the Tao, words that come out of the spirit submitted to God, the words that come from grace rather than the ego. The ego is always about the defense, right? When Jesus said, don't worry beforehand about how you will defend yourselves. Make up your mind. Resolve your heart. Make up your mind. Get this right. Set that straight. Stand your ground here. Don't concern yourselves about defending yourselves. Don't concern yourself with defending yourself. Let that go. Trust. And in life itself will give you the exact words that can't be resisted or contradicted, you know? So Jesus himself being the Tao, Jesus himself being the Tao in the flesh, the way in the flesh, the Tao in the flesh, the incarnation of the Tao. Jesus said to his disciples, he says, I am the way, or I am the Tao. I am the Tao, the truth, the life. And there is this way to get out of the way of responding to what life brings to us with our own understanding, and to let the Tao speak for itself. To let the Tao speak for itself. To be that incarnation of the Tao, just as Jesus was. So Solomon wrote, he said, King Solomon wrote, he says, trust in the Lord. Follow your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your way, your path. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your ways, right? In all your ways acknowledge the Tao, and the Tao will direct your path. So it's this way of trusting rather than thinking. The Tao is a way of trusting rather than thinking. The intellect of man, the way of men is comprised of many words. Many words. The wisdom and the intellect of men is comprised of many words. Go to any college, go to any university, and you have to learn a lot of words, a lot of definitions, a lot of meanings. But the way of the Tao, the way of God, the way of Jesus, the way of life itself, isn't a way of many words. It's a way of trust. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. The way of the Tao is not a way of many words, not a way of convincing, not a way of convincing. Trust is the language. Trust is the language. Trust is the tongue. Trust is the intelligence. Trust is the wisdom of the Tao. Faith, trust, is the language, the tongue, the intelligence, and the wisdom of the Tao. Faith is the trust, the language, the tongue, the intelligence, the wisdom of the Tao. Because truth cannot be known by a mind which defends itself by a rationalization. Only the trusting heart, only the open mind can know truth. Truth cannot be known by the mind which defends itself by a rationalization. Only the trusting heart, the open mind, the willing to know the truth. When one speaks from a heart of trust or faith, rather than a mind that defends itself and rationalizes everything, when you speak from that heart of faith, from that trusting heart, the speech that comes out of that is irresistible. It can't be contended with. Because faith, because trust is a matter of presence. Trusting you, I can be present with you. If I don't trust you, I'll seek to separate myself from your presence, right? But there's this wisdom, there's this flow, this stream of understanding, of knowing, that it's just silent, quiet trust. The faith brings with it silence. The faith brings with it quietness of heart. The faith brings with it quietness of spirit. The faith brings with it silence. The trust brings with it ease, rest. He that believes shall not make haste. He that believes shall not make haste. There's this silence that comes with that, you know. When we have that kind of faith, when we have that kind of trust that gives birth to that kind of quietude, there's no contention. All wars come to an end with this faith. The battle is the large, faith is the victory. The battle is the large, faith is the victory. It's not, the Tao can take care of it, can do the Tao. We don't do it. But with this faith comes this quietude. The contention stops. For a war requires that there be two contenders. When one does not contend, there is no war. For contention is the substance that war is formed with. Resistance is the substance that gives war its form, its being. So Jesus told us, make up your mind, set your heart, get this one right. Don't worry about how to defend yourself. Because the way of the Tao is not a way of defense. It's a way of trust. The way of the Tao is not a way of defense, but a way of trust. The way of the Tao is to trust life's capacity, ability, and willingness to come to our defense. The way of the Tao is about trusting life's capacity, ability, and willingness to come to our defense without being defensive. To come to our defense without us attempting to vindicate ourselves by employing our own finite and limited wisdom that is carnal in its very nature. A lower rather than a higher form of wisdom. And so it is that words that force, battles of the wit, are not from the spirit of the Tao. That's wisdom from below. The Tao is wisdom from above. The way of the Tao, the wisdom from above. I think St. James even puts it that way. There's the wisdom from below of the earth, and there's the wisdom from above. The way of the Tao is peaceable, gentle. It's not about trying to overpower one another. The Tao is not concerned with winning. And because the Tao is not concerned with winning, it wins without force or manipulation. Because the Tao is not concerned with winning, the Tao wins without force or manipulation. Because it has nothing to prove. For the Tao itself is truth. The Tao wins hearts by bringing them to clarity. To clarity. The Tao wins hearts by bringing them to clarity. Its subjects are they that make themselves subject to it. The subjects of the Tao are they that make themselves subject to it. The throne of the Tao is secured and established by love. It draws to itself the subjects of its kingdom by its charisma. Attraction rather than promotion. It collects no taxes from its subjects, yet it fills their hearts with love for it. So the Tao is this way of presence. Strike the Tao on the cheek, it will turn the other. Compel it to go a mile, it'll go two, even thrice. The Tao turns away from nothing, flees no one's presence, occupies its territory with willingness to be present. That's how it occupies, with willingness to be present. Thus its reign is complete. It rests in the lowest hell and the highest heaven. It's inescapable because it's willing to be anywhere, any place, any time, with anybody. It's willing. Its willingness makes it invincible, inescapable. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall trouble or hardship or persecution or famine or nakedness or danger or sword? No, in all these things. Nettie. Not this, not that. Not this, not that. I'm convinced that neither death nor life, nor angels or demons, the present or future, or powers or height or depth, or anything in creation will be able to separate us from God's love, which is in Christ Jesus, our Lord. The Tao is not rude or self-seeking. The Tao not easily angered or unforgiving. Overcomes everything with its presence. The Tao, being not rude, nor self-seeking, nor easily angered, nor unforgiving, overcomes all things by its presence. Nothing can overpower it because of its powerlessness. Nothing can overpower the Tao because of its powerlessness. What contends with the Tao empowers it. Not resisting and receiving, the Tao consumes what stands against it. Until that which resists it wears itself out. Then the resistor, drained of its power, collapses at the Tao's feet. The Tao is patient. It can wait for all the contenders to wear themselves out. The Tao can just sit there and wait patiently, contently, easily. When mere men look to contend with the Tao, then the Tao cannot be found. Though they seek it out, they cannot find it, for they are it. When mere men look to contend with the Tao, then the Tao cannot be found. Though they seek it out, they cannot find it, for they are it. It hides itself from them in themselves. Oh yeah. Why would the Tao need to contend with those who fight themselves? Why would it even need to contend with those that fight themselves, that do themselves in? Thus it can turn the other cheek without taking offense, without suffering injury. Then the Tao in its silence, in its presence, is invincible, and its disciples more than conquerors, who transcend those who contend, who overpower. For the disciples of the Tao are they who overtake things with love, with presence, with trust. They win by losing all notions and beliefs of winning. They win by losing all notions and beliefs of winning. Nothing is to be gained or lost. All is right, all is well. Life makes no mistakes. How could it? The Tao is both the conductor and the orchestra itself, brilliant in its composure, composing silent symphonies. Namaste, my friends. That's all for today.